Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I thought I'd give you the price of crude oil there on the screen to start. $106. It's doubled since Donald Trump and his fellow psychopath decided to attack the 90 million person country of Iran. And yeah, not looking good. Not looking good. We had the first major corporate casualty of the global economic catastrophe that Donald Trump's overseen, which is, oh, sorry, I put the same thing up there twice, which is Spirit Airlines is gone. Now, I know I can't imagine a lot of you are shedding tears for Spirit Airlines. Uh, you know, it is the best airline on the planet because they had you if you didn't pay extra, you had to put your legs in the overhead carry-on bin because there was not room for human legs. There were other types of legs that they would allow on board, but if you had adult human legs that they had to go in the overhead carry-on bin because otherwise you had to pay extra for a bigger seat that allowed for the human legs. But yeah, Spirit collapsed overnight. And there's some reports that much of Europe has enough jet fuel left to go like another week. We're going to continue to see the ripple effects through the airline industry, maybe in the largest way. But farmers don't have fertilizer. I mean, the ripple effects are going to keep hitting. The waves are coming. The tsunamis are coming. And yeah, Spirit Airlines collapsed overnight and collapsed so hard and so quick that they didn't say like everybody fly home. We got a week left. They said we're done and you're not getting home, and that's it. They just closed up shop. They just put that little out to lunch clock, where they put what time they're coming back. They just ripped the hands off the clock and they just set that on the little agent counter, and that was it. And yeah, so Spirit Airlines gone again. I don't think a lot of you are going to shed a lot of tears for that, but I just thought it was a good representation of what we're going to see more of. Trump is not, Iran is not basically involved in the in the talks because Iran has said until you end your blockade of our blockade, we're not talking about anything. Basically, they will allow the Strait of Hormuz to be open as long as the United States allows it to be fully open. But the United States is blockading their blockade, which, yeah, he is a master military tactician, this Donald Trump guy. But I wanted to bring to you. Oh, and by the way, I should have told you guys what else we got. We got excellent author Robin Anderson coming up later in the show. She has put out a book called The Complicit Lens about U.S. and mainstream media being complicit with the Gaza genocide. I've got that coming up for you. More info on Gaza and Israel's plans to probably resume the war with Gaza, if you want to call it a war, but I prefer genocide because that's really what the definition fits far better. But anyway, according to Dropside News, President Donald Trump is scrambling to find a way to declare victory in the war against Iran, vacillating between public demands to make a deal and threats to unleash a new round of massive bombing. The U.S. naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz has sparked a global economic and energy crisis, and neither the blockade nor Trump's threats have resulted in Iranian capitulation or willingness to forfeit any of its rights to control maritime traffic in the Strait. Iran does not seem threatened at all by our insanity. They seem to be fine with it. They seem to understand that they are in a fight for their civilization, whereas we are just in a fight out of power and greed. And so they assume, it seems rather rightfully, that existential threat to their entire population, the resolve is going to be stronger than the U.S. just wanting to enrich the empire. I'll put a little poll here on the screen. And if you're in the chat, if you're in the live chat right now, you can vote by putting a 1, 2, 3, or 4. as to how will the U.S. war against Iran end. I think you need to just type the number. Don't type a comment with the number, or it might not actually add up your vote. But anyway, I wanted to bring you some comments from an Iranian official that wanted to remain anonymous, because I feel like you can watch mainstream media and you'll get some information from it, maybe about what's going on with Iran, but you rarely get information from Iranian officials, at least what I've seen, both because mainstream media has no contact with Iranian officials, but also because they don't want to bring the American people what Iran is asking or offering or saying, because most of it makes so much common sense. It like seems, oh, that's understandable, that because they're afraid Americans will see through the propaganda, which I feel like most have, because most Americans do not support this fucking insane war. Anyway, Iran has no intention of participating in direct talks until the U.S. blockade is lifted. Quote from the Iranian official: based on current assessments, another military attack seems likely. Trump's goals from the naval blockade haven't been achieved, the official said. He can't keep the blockade going for much longer. We think the U.S. will focus on Hormuz, so military attacks and operations will likely expand along Iran's coastline, along with a new wave of assassinations against Iranian leaders they may pursue jointly with Israel. And you'll notice how this official does not seem scared at all, because I think that Iranian officials seem to have the feeling that if they are murdered by the U.S. and Israel, then they have done what they could for their people, and they seem rather fine with that. Like they've fought for their people, and if they take a drone bomb to the head, then that's what it is. The official who requested, as with the Ayatollah, he was asked to get in an underground bunker, etc., and he refused. He said he would just keep working at his office, and sure enough, the U.S. and Israel just bombed his office. Of course, Trump had to act like it was some amazing military mission that we achieved. Look at what we did. We found him in his office, working his daily office hours like he always does. Ha ha! We did it. Anyway, the official who requested anonymity has direct knowledge of internal deliberations in Tehran. Trump, he argued, has limited options to find an off-ramp from his increasingly unpopular war. Here's another quote: "We have succeeded through the sustained management of the Strait of Hormuz under our control in effectively transforming the unilateral pressure imposed by the Americans into a reciprocal one. As time progresses, the restrictions imposed on this strategic choke point will generate increasingly widespread consequences for various goods and commodities worldwide. The U.S. has, in practice, positioned itself as a destabilizing force for the global economy, particularly in the energy sector. This development, from a strategic perspective, works clearly and substantially to Iran's advantage." And what he's saying is also why I have brought you segments about how this is quite likely the end of the U.S. empire. This very well, I mean, you can't say with certainty, but this seems to be kind of the hair that breaks the camel's back in the U.S. empire. Thank you, a non-user over on Rumble, for supporting the show. $50 donation. Very impressive. Thank you, a non-user over on rumble.com/Lee Camp. For those of you who are fans of Rumble, I am at rumble.com/Lee Camp. And Venticus Prime donated as well, saying everything's a scam, everything's a lie, everything's hypocrisy, and so you don't comply. Okay, but also I am not a lie. So not everything, just everything except me is a lie. But yes, thank you guys for supporting the show. But yeah, this seems very much like it continues down the path of this could very well be the end of the U.S. empire, and both as the world switches off of oil, which is how the U.S. has maintained dollar hegemony, as the world switches away from the petrodollar, with China's rise, China now leads in, I believe it's 70 of 76 key technological advancements, breakthroughs, technological areas. There's an ongoing analysis of which countries lead in technology and technological advancements, and I don't remember what the list is of those 76 doesn't much matter. But my point is, this analysis, which by the way was put out, is regularly put out by a pro-US, pro-Australia think tank. They China leads in 70 out of 76. Mark is telling me it's 69 out of 74. I'll believe you, Mark. All right, if you think I'm off by one, fine. Okay, correction taken. Jesus, way to interrupt a excellent rant I had going. But yeah, it's the rise of China. Like, you just look at the writing on the wall, and it's very similar to Egypt, the end of I was going to say Egyptian Empire, the end of the British Empire via Egypt. I brought that to you a couple of weeks ago from an article in Consortium News, I think, that, the British Empire was waning for a while. It's not like it was news that the British Empire was fading. But then kind of the final straw, the big final moment, was them furious that Nasser had socialized, nationalized the canal, and in the Suez Canal in Egypt, and they wanted him dead. They were just like, okay, go kill Nasser. And at first they failed to achieve that. So then they invade, they destroy the Egyptian military or the Air Force, etc. But Nasser then sinks a bunch of container ships across the canal and effectively closes the canal. And it was such a monumental blow to the British economy, the global economy, that Britain ultimately had to crawl to the IMF for a loan. That seems to be where the U.S. is headed. Seems to be what Trump is overseeing. Okay, this is actually not really a change of topic at all, but I wanted to switch to the headline of this episode, which is even CNN is now covering this, that we now know the truth of just how many military bases, military facilities Iran hit during the hot part of the war, during the active firing part of this attack on Iran. Iran damaged 16 U.S. military sites using advanced Chinese satellites in 8 separate countries. And it showed that Iran's capabilities were far more than the U.S. gave them credit for, than other countries gave them credit for. But also, the U.S. has had to evacuate those bases, and I think the strikes were pretty effective at causing massive damage. But even if they weren't, let's say they missed by a couple of feet, and the U.S. goes, oh, thank goodness they didn't hit the main headquarters building of that base. Are you really going to put U.S. military back in harm's way, back on that base? Probably not, or not much. And so all Iran has to do is prove that they have these capabilities to essentially make these bases, these facilities, borderline useless. The U.S. is likely not going to fill those with troops right now. And when are they going to go back? When is the U.S. going to decide, you know what, we're going to take our whole military, we're going to put them back on those bases, and we're going to see if Iran kills them? Now, Trump doesn't give a shit about our military or our troops, and he doesn't really care if they die. So it's possible he'll do that tomorrow. I don't know. But I think that by hitting these 16 U.S. military sites, probably the U.S. and the U.S. military are largely not using those sites now. And this is part of why you see that the U.S. can't just keep bombing Iran. Yes, they can kill a bunch of schoolgirls. Awesome. Way to go, psychopaths. You're pedo terrorists. You guys rock. Love it. Love it for you. But they can kill a lot of schoolgirls. They can blow up bridges, but they're not actually winning a war against Iran. They're just committing war crimes and killing a bunch of children and shit. Maybe assassinate some leaders. But it's not changing the calculation. Iran is going to go down the same path. Iran's going to have control of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. empire is failing and flailing. Failing and flailing is our new motto. And anyway, this also says something about the U.S. media, that you don't get this information. Like I said, CNN covered it the other day. You don't get this information until, a month, 2 months after the strikes. That's how quickly Western media will bring you some of this information. Nearly a month after the ceasefire with Iran began, and with the possibility of renewed war still on the table, the depth of the damage to U.S. bases in the region is becoming clear. At least 16 American military facilities in 8 countries, effectively most U.S. bases in the Middle East. So I didn't realize that, but they're saying that is most of the U.S. bases were damaged in Iranian strikes during the war. According to a CNN investigation, some of the sites that were hit are currently unusable. I have never seen anything like this at U.S. bases, a person familiar with the matter said. These were fast and precise strikes using advanced technology. Among the U.S. bases hit were sites in Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Iraq. Speaking of UAE and Dubai, I'm going to bring you a story about that in a second. But among them was the U.S. E-3 Sentry surveillance aircraft, known as the Eyes of the United States in the Gulf. Also, Iran took out, I've covered this before, took out several of the most advanced radar systems and missile systems that basically protect U.S. bases and protect Israel. And those missile systems, anti-missile systems, cost billions of dollars and take like a year or two to manufacture. So we were basically had none of them left, and we had to dismantle the THAAD interceptor that we had put into South Korea that had caused a big stir and a big China was furious when it was put into South Korea. And we dismantled that one and brought it to the Middle East because we basically are running out of them. But yeah, the ripple effects of the horror show that the U.S. has hit play on, the horror movie that the U.S. has clicked play on, they're fascinating. They are many and they are fascinating. Dubai is collapsing, just like straight up collapsing. This article says Dubai is dead. War, capital flight, and the collapse of a global mirage. And as most of you know, Dubai has sold itself as this rich man's playground. Rich people often fleeing crimes in other countries. That is basically all that Dubai specializes in. They built those man-made islands, and apparently, they had trouble selling places on them because they were also sinking and they were killing fish. So you had like the stink of millions of dead fish and all this stuff. But sounds just like a great time. But the people buying those houses were like, drug kingpins and Russian oligarchs that were kicked out of the country, and various people fleeing one form of prosecution or another. Probably all Epstein's friends were there. I think Bill Gates lives there now. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, Dubai is dead. It says Dubai's pitch to the world was disarmingly simple: zero income tax, zero capital gains tax, modern infrastructure, and above all, security. That final promise was the foundation of everything. But now, of course, Iran has been bombing Dubai, but bombing Dubai because Dubai has been allied with the United States. The emirate positioned itself as insulated from the conflicts that surrounded it, protected by strategic alliances with the United States and increasingly Israel, and reinforced by the presence of Western military infrastructure in the region. Investors, hedge funds, and multinational corporations were told that Dubai was different, that it existed outside the volatility of the Middle East, that nothing would disrupt the flow of capital. Boy, it sounds like a psychopath's paradise. That narrative has now collapsed. Hundreds of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and thousands of drone strikes targeting the Emirates since late February, many intercepted, but not all, leaving civilians exposed to a level of insecurity that undermines the core premise of being a psychopath's playground. For a population composed overwhelmingly of expats, this shift is existential. Dubai was never designed to withstand prolonged instability, and its residents were never expected to endure it. And that's the other thing, is everybody living there has no allegiance, not even the minimum amount of allegiance to that area. They all are only there because they're fleeing something else, or, wanted to buy $1 million condo that looked out on the ocean, whatever. But So the moment things don't go well, they flee. Deep engagement in multiple conflict zones, shaping outcomes in ways that have contributed to long-term instability. This is UAE they're talking about. UAE has allied with the United States and Israel, but also has been kind of doing the bidding of Israel. In Somalia, the UAE is described as having fueled internal divisions by backing competing factions, while in Yemen and Libya, it is accused of supporting armed groups and prolonged civil wars. These interventions are portrayed as having exacerbated humanitarian crises and entrenched cycles of violence that continue to destabilize those regions. So, yeah, this is not good for Dubai. And I mean, it more than most countries, everybody living there has no allegiance to it, just looking for the psychopath's playground. And therefore, this is ugly times for Dubai. But anyway, back to the U.S. has been hit in all these different bases. And I want to show you some of the satellite imagery that is showing these strikes, which, as you can see, were very precision based. These little white globes there, I believe, are forms of radar systems. I don't know a lot about this stuff, but I think so. And as you can see, they hit each one dead on. Like they obliterated each one. They knew what they were doing. And some have said that the U.S. forces were sitting ducks, as if it really is as if in the war planning for these idiots in the Trump administration, there was no thought as to what the ramifications would be, how Iran might respond, what Iran might hit, etc. They just went ahead and went for it and thought that killing Khamenei in the first day would just, I don't know, Iran would just throw up their hands and that'd be it. All right. I want to slightly shift to Israel for a moment, but this will be a good segue into our guest in a few minutes. There is new reporting that Israel is planning to restart their what they call war with Gaza, resume their war with Gaza. It's not really a war; it's just a genocide. But and most of you, when you hear restart the war, you may go, "Isn't Israel still bombing Gaza?" Yeah, Israel has struck Gaza in one form or another almost every single day during this ceasefire since last October. Let me see. Here's from Al Jazeera. They've injured 2,316 since the ceasefire. They've killed 824 since the ceasefire. And then here is a calendar which with each day circled that Israel bombed or struck Iran in one form or another. And in the month of April, it was every single day Israel struck Iran. Sorry, did I say Iran? Gaza. I meant to say Gaza. In the month of April, every single day, Israel has been striking Gaza, which is not a ceasefire. And this is similar to what we saw with Hezbollah when they had a ceasefire with Israel. They have a ceasefire. Israel then continues to bomb Hezbollah, but Hezbollah did not respond for that entire time. So Israel just violated the ceasefire thousands of times. And it really is, for Israel, a ceasefire is basically the other side ceases and they keep firing. But they have taken over, stolen 60% of Gaza now. They had a yellow line, which I think was a little less than 60%, maybe 58 or 53 or something. And they have slowly moved that yellow line at various areas further into the remainder of Gaza, where all the survivors try to live, mainly in rubble. But they continue to steal more and more of Gaza. So it's now up to 60%. And according, this is reporting by Middle East Eye, but they're citing Army Radio, which has said that Israel is pressing to restart the fighting, arguing that now is the optimal moment to defeat Hamas. That's senior military officials within Israel. The military has also reduced forces in southern Lebanon while redeploying brigades in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. So it seems like Israel is prepping to go back to some sort of full frontal assault on the people of Gaza. And as you know, the acknowledged and accepted minimum number of people that have been killed in Gaza by Israel, have been murdered in Gaza, is 72,000, over 72,000, most of those women and children. But a larger estimate, which has been quoted by UN Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, is 680,000. And that includes the non-direct, the indirect deaths, because two of the biggest weapons that Israel has intentionally used in Gaza is starvation and disease. They don't give them the medication. They don't give them the hospital facilities. They withhold food. So once you count indirect deaths, the estimate is around 680,000. Even if that were off by a significant factor, it could very well still be 500,000, 500,000 people murdered in Gaza. People are saying, the vast percentage of those is babies, infants, and children. It is a horror show of unbelievable amount. And I wrote a little more extensively about this at my Substack. If you want to go read that after we're done here, it is free to read over at reallycamp.substack.com. That's also where you can support this show. We have essentially no corporate advertising. YouTube puts a couple ads on it, but there's hardly any money in that, and it's crazy suppressed. So we have no corporate advertisers. We have there's no big backers. The only way I'm able to keep this show going is just by you guys deciding that you want to throw the cost of one beer a month my way. So if you think it's worth that, reallycamp.substack.com or patreon.com/leecamp. But all right, on this same topic of Israel, but on the media aspect of it, I want to get to our distinguished guest. I'm excited to have join me. She has just come out with the book Complicit Lens, U.S. Media Coverage of Israel's Genocide in Gaza. And she is a quite an accomplished journalist and professor. Please welcome Robin Anderson. Hello.
Hi, Lee. Thanks. Nice to be
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I mean, for being on, not for having me, but for being on. I really appreciate it. I am working my way through your book, and I think it is excellent. I'm glad somebody with the skills took the time to put this into a format, all this information into a format that will not disappear in some digital book burning, like the purge of so many YouTube videos. Just yesterday, I covered YouTube deleting 700 videos that showed Israeli war crimes. So I am excited to have this book out there. I think it's important.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I wanted to start off. A lot of it revolves kind of around October 7th and around the media coverage of October 7th. You talk about the framing of October 7th, and I was hoping you could just try and give a little summary of the framing of October 7th and how it was framed in Western media.
Right. Well, for the mainstream media and for Israel, the fighting or whatever it was, the attacks for Al-Aqsa flood, as Hamas called them, they started everything. That was the absolute beginning. Nothing happened before that. It was a surprise. It was, gosh, nobody could have predicted this. It was, well, I wonder, why would they do it? Well, because Hamas are vicious terrorists. And that's the only reason we were ever given. So when you have a narrative that starts at one event, it encapsulates it, and everything past that event then is the story. And most of the story is retaliation against Hamas. So everything that Israel was doing because of this terrible terroristic attack was justified and was was defensive. The problem with that is, actually, if we think about it as a historical continuum, right now, also what Israel is doing in East Jerusalem is clearing out whole neighborhoods for settlers to move in there. So it's always it's almost in Jerusalem like it's a baby Nakba. They're doing it now. Well, in 2021, they were doing the same thing. They were emptying out this neighborhood. It's right by it's East Jerusalem, right by Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they were attacking worshipers as they went into the mosque, and they were allowing Israelis to go into the mosque and pushing people out of the neighborhood. And the Palestinians there were engaged in a peaceful protest of this. Well, what Israel did is tear gas them and attack them. And this went on for a little while. And the UN looked into it later and said that that there was no justification for the way they were treating these protesters. They were not an imminent threat, nothing like that. And what Gaza did, what happened in Gaza after that, shortly after that, is they lobbed some missiles over to Israel and killed about a dozen Israelis. So what we got in 2021 was exactly really what happened on October 7th, where Israel responded to that attack by leveling 4 apartment buildings, taking out two towers that had journalism offices in them. One tower had the AP and Al Jazeera. So they deliberately attacked the free press. They killed over 200 people. So what that is in terms of what we call a war crime is it was disproportionate violence and it was collective punishment. And what those two things mean is that somebody attacks you a little bit and a few people die, and then you go and you kill a whole bunch of people and make the civilian population pay for what their fighters or their leaders have done. Those are all against international law, as was at the time Israel's apartheid system against occupation, and Israel had been engaged in an illegal occupation for many years, because you can't just occupy a country for that many years, right? And if you do, they actually have a right to resist that. But Israel became more and more punitive and vengeful. Many journalists were put in kind of as a preview to what was going to happen after October 7th. Many journalists were put in jail on the charge that just reporting on what Israel was doing was incitement, right? So no human rights. They controlled their food, their caloric intake. They controlled everything about their economy. So this didn't just come out of nowhere. All of this background was completely ignored by the mainstream press. And there's a lot of documentation in my book and done by other people who show how this happened. And the October 7th narrative was almost an invention, except for it's the way television journalism primarily structures news, with a disruption, a social disruption, and then an official response.
And not only you did a great job saying of some of what the conditions were that led to October 7th, but the media wants to pretend everything begins on October 7th. But eventually, even the New York Times, although they, this is one of these cases where they admit to something and then they never mention it again. But at one point, even the New York Times covered the fact that Israel knew about Hamas's attack plans for a year in advance and had every last detail, which Hamas stuck to. So they knew absolutely everything that was going to happen. And I've covered, how the spotters, the IDF spotters that have no other job but to watch the wall, watch the videos of the wall, etc. They'd been raising the alarm for a year to 2 years about the plans for this. And then you cover in your book the use of the Hannibal Directive, which I've also talked about.
Right. Well, also, well before the New York Times decided to publish this, Richard Sanders, the film director, the British film director, did two amazing documentaries, and one was October 7th. And he looked at all the camera work from the body cams that the fighters had on them. So those that were killed or captured, he had that footage. And also what he says is, this is very strange because on social media, Hamas was demonstrating how they were practicing the balloons. All kinds of things were already on social media. And in January, a group of families of people who were killed at the rave also sued the IDF for not doing anything, because they also had foreknowledge from their chatter online and that something was going to happen, but they decided not to cancel the rave. Now, when Hamas got in there, they didn't know there was a music festival there. So what I really like the words of Richard Sanders when he says, Hamas committed war crimes on October 7th. There's no getting around it. They took hostages. You're not supposed to do that. And you're not supposed to kill civilians. They killed some civilians. But Israel called in the Hannibal Directive. Estimations are they killed probably about half the civilians. They got into Apache helicopters over the rave, and they dumped these massive ordinances on people that they could not distinguish, admittedly, between festival goers or hostages or Hamas. And so much of the video, that is to say, so much of the killing that day was also done by Israeli forces that took a long time to come in. And there's a great testimony by a young woman named Yasmin Borat, who was at Kibbutz Be'eri. And they waited and waited. They had about 12 hostages there. And then when the Israeli soldiers arrived, they just opened fire. And she said there was massive fire, and all of the hostages but her were killed. It's very interesting to listen to the tape where the presenter goes, well, wait, did you but our soldiers didn't kill them, did they? She goes, you don't understand. There was massive crossfire. They killed everybody, and that's what they did. This was published very early on in Haaretz and other of the Israeli media, but the United States media has buried it to this day. And to this day, you will see still in the press, this is in retaliation for Hamas's attack that killed 1,200 people, mostly civilians. Every single time they did a body count. Why should they keep repeating it? Was like a mantra, something that was false. It was simply false at that point.
What do you make of the fact that you can get some of this truth even in Israeli media, but you can't get any of it in Western media?
Right. And it was Haaretz that reported on, finally, by December, that they had evidence from their interviews with soldiers all the way up and down, the generals, the highest level and below, that yes, indeed, the Hannibal Directive was summoned, if you will, was called in on the part of the Israelis, and the directive states, kill everyone, do not take hostages, because they don't want to have to negotiate with quote unquote terrorists.
Yeah. The Hannibal Directive, just in general, can't be mentioned on mainstream media in the U.S. or Britain. Right. But it's, Yoav Gallant has admitted to it. There's interviews with the defense secretary at the time of Israel, yes, saying, yeah, we use the Hannibal Directive. And
they're out now. And the U.S. media has not corrected their terrible reporting.
Yeah, they don't correct it. Talk for a few minutes about the now famous New York Times rape story that has really fallen apart in all ways.
Yeah. I mean, the New York Times still has not recounted that story. It's probably one of the worst embarrassments in journalism, ever written. My take on it in the book is that really what it is trauma porn. The graphic details, the graphic descriptions in that article are things that we have never seen in U.S. media before, in U.S. reporting. The descriptions of so let's think about first the stereotypes that they fit into: the Orientalism, the Arab terrorist, the knife wielding Arab terrorist. They also the single person that Annette Schwartz got to talk to her was promoted by the Israeli military. All the other sources had been discredited, even though that piece quotes numerously and cites this organization called Zaka, which was presented to the press, and the Times presented, especially in the rape piece, as a legitimate, first responding, almost UN-backed, neutral, with the appearance of kind of neutrality and with medical training. Zaka is anything but that. It was a directly tied to Netanyahu's public diplomacy, which is how they call their hasbara, their propaganda, directly tied. Hamas, Netanyahu is seen on a videotape telling them that you're really doing a lot for us to keep this war up, and avenge those 1,400 people, he tells them, in late September. So Zaka was and is still a Orthodox organization that had already sued the government to stop autopsies. They had no medical experience. They were against medical experience. They said they had all of these pictures. They showed no pictures, and they invented stories, basically.
And they're brought in to basically get rid of all the evidence. Like they come in and take the bodies away, and anything that could be used to figure out what actually happened is removed within a day.
Absolutely. So here's the Arab terrorists. Like, do you remember what happened at 9/11? What did they have on the airplanes? Box cutters. So in this story, we've got the worst stereotypes of the Arab terrorist pulling out a box cutter, slicing off a woman's breast, throwing it around, playing with it, raping her, doing all this horrible stuff. And one of this very thorough and interesting organization in Egypt called Speak Up, that is a feminist organization that attempts to stop violence against women there. And what they say is, there should have been, as to your point earlier, Lee, that there should have been a ton of forensic evidence, blood splatters everywhere. And Zaka says they were the first ones in there, and they were right in there, and they never, but they didn't see, they talked about semen speared all over bodies, no forensic evidence whatsoever, no visual evidence. They were moving so fast. What were they doing moving so fast they never took a picture? Anything like that they just did everything and covered it up.
One of my favorite statements from the Israeli government, what they did with the, I believe the estimated number was 70, but it may have been far more than that, blown up cars, which you can still find video or photos of those cars, just walls of blown up vehicles, which doesn't make sense to be done by Hamas, because Hamas had small arms, and these these cars are obliterated. But Israel, in one of their statements, because you can go see like a couple of these cars, but you can't see the dozens that did exist. Right. They said they shredded them and buried them in order to be environmentally conscious.
The Israelis did?
Yeah.
Oh, the whole thing is so environmentally conscious.
Yeah, shredded and buried all the evidence in all the cars. Yeah.
Well, those are clearly from helicopter fire and from the tank fire. They showed buildings destroyed. You can't destroy a building with a little thing that they were handheld that the fighters were carrying. You can't destroy a building doing that. And that's what Richard Saunders also says. He says, and Jonathan Cook has written about this a lot. They're very good sources. So, and Jonathan Cook's love to point out, all of the international press went to Kibbutz Be'eri. They never talked about any of the testimony of the of the people who were survivors of the attack and how the Israelis came in and just opened fire on anybody. None of that. And that Zakov members also said, so if you to believe the rape story, you have to believe that everything was perfectly in situ when they went in there, because there were these, they had described these teenage girls that were raped and separated, which had already been reported on the BBC as the girls were found in their mother's arms. And that was debunked a good month before the story even was published in the New York Times. So the sloppiness and the getting away with it, if you will, the complete abandonment of journalistic principles. They call themselves the paper of record, and I guess they're depending on their reputation and their Pulitzer Prize winning journalists as the byline head. But if you think about the timing of that also, Lee, the timing of that article happened right when the South Africans were filing their case in the International Court of Justice charging genocide. So it was a huge distraction. And also what Richard Sanders says, Hamas committed some crimes, nothing as to what Israel was about to do. And he says, and yet the reporting was not on what Hamas actually did, but what they did not do. There's no evidence that they weaponized rape. There's no evidence, and certainly no evidence of 40 babies. There was actually one baby killed that day. One infant under 2 years old was killed that day. Yep. Yet there was 40 beheaded babies. He was telling Biden that, and Biden said, "I saw them." I mean, these are just very obvious and never recounted, never corrected lies.
And you mentioned her name. I can't remember it. The Israeli journalist that worked for that article,
Annette Schwartz.
Yeah, Annette Schwartz. She said in a podcast where she was trying to, I think she was like trying to say how hard she had worked on it, and there's this amazing quote that I don't have here where she says, "I could not find anything. I went to every women's shelter. I called everyone. I talked to every person that worked at a women's shelter, every hospital about reports of rape. I could not find anything, but we just had to keep working." It was like,
keep working. Finally, she gets this absolute propagandist that the military is pushing on people, and had been trying, but nobody else picked it up.
Yeah, and ultimately they hand her this propagandist who's known for making shit up. But it's this amazing admission of like, there was no evidence whatsoever, but we needed to make the article work. I mean, that is not how journalism works at all.
No credible eyewitness, no forensic, no visual, just nothing.
Thank you again so much for taking the time to join me. I highly recommend the book, The Complicit Lens. Where can people, I assume they can buy this anywhere books are sold, but where can they follow your work?
Well, the best place to buy the book is on the Or book site, on the Or Books publishing website. And you can order it from there and get it in a couple of days. It won't be in bookstores until about June, because they like you to buy it from them first. So that's
okay. I was unfamiliar with Or Books, so it is orbooks.com. Or Books.
Or Books, yes. Or Books.
Yeah. Would you like to do something else? Or Books, yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much, and again, thank you for writing this book. I think it's such an important task to get this all down in a well put and well written form. So,
thanks.
Thank you again, Robin. Bye. All right, Robin Anderson. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I certainly did, and I was happy to let you guys know about that book, which I think you should all check out. I want to keep going here. I have a little more on Israel, and then because you guys have said that you wanted me to bring more solutions, I have a couple of solutions coming up in the show. More answers, more things we can do. And, solutions can be a varied group of things. It could be amazing technological advancements, or it could be how to properly vandalize a weapons contractor or something like that. But Anyway, let's see here. I wanted to play this quick video on this is the discussion that this is how people arguing about Israel like to try and entrap you into losing the debate about Israel. And the question, which I've made fun of before, but we'll analyze a little deeper for a moment. But the question they always want to nail you with is, do you support Israel's right to exist? Do you support Israel's right to exist? And whether you say yes or no, it's a gotcha. Because if you say yes, well, then discussion over. We can't discuss genocide anymore because you just said you want Israel to exist. Okay, no discussion over. And if you say no, oh, you're an anti-Semite, I see. But anyway, I'm going to play this video, and then I'm going to there's a lot I have to add to this video, so but it'll cover some of the points. I think Mehdi Hassan speaks on like the second half of it, but anyway.
Do you believe that Israel has a right to exist?
Israel does exist.
Do you support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state?
I support Israel's right to exist as a state with equal rights.
Does it have a right to exist? And so my question to you would be, what is that?
Why don't you answer my question? It's a very
I don't know what your question is. Are you asking,
there's
does it
a
have a right to
political
exist, or do I want it to exist? Do I seek its destruction?
Do you or do you not support Israel's right to exist? You've all heard that line before, right? It's the go-to move. If you don't support Israel's right to exist, you're an extremist. You're an anti-Semite. You want to wipe Israel and millions of Israeli Jews off the map. You don't have to concede on this point. It's a bullshit argument. Number one, right to exist where? Where? Number two.
Well, hold on. Before he keeps going, the reason the where question is so important is because even if you were to say, well, where it is, okay, well, where it was after it was formed in 1947 with the vote of 33 nations at the UN is not where it is now. But it's completely different borders than it was then. Israel has taken far more of the land. And so the Israel that people say has a right to exist is now, greatly enlarged. Now they're stealing Gaza. They already have stolen 60% of Gaza. They're trying to get the rest of it. They're stealing the West Bank. They're trying to genocide and steal South Lebanon. And if you look at the map of Greater Israel, we're talking whole nations. We're talking going into Saudi Arabia, parts of Egypt. Anyway, so this question is not like Israel has a right to exist no matter how big it gets, no matter how many areas it steals, no matter how many people it genocides. And so it's a nonsense question just from that aspect. Okay, then he gets into number two as to why this is a stupid question.
What is this right to exist? Where does it come from? People, individuals have a right to exist. Human beings have that right, not states, not countries. And number three.
And yeah, a state does not have a right. Like, we talk about human rights. We don't really talk about nation rights. But then also, like, nations change across history. They always do. They always have. The United States has stolen territories around the world and put them into the U.S. empire. The Great Britain technically owns a lot of the world, but then has given essentially freedom to places like Canada and Australia and many others. So if you were to say Britain has a right to exist, does Britain have a right to just own and do what they want with Canada, Australia? Like, the U.S. has a right to exist. Well, then does the U.S. have a right to do whatever the fuck they want with Puerto Rico and Philippines and Hawaii and everything else that they have stolen or in one form or another in their colonialism? The question is illogical just on its face. But anyway, let's keep going.
Last but not least, if there is a right to exist, as they claim, does Palestine have a right to exist?
Well, Israel is.
Well, of course not. And that is the other thing. They will never say you may get an argument with a friend where your friend will go, of course Palestine has a right to exist. But the truth is, the actual Israeli ruling elite who have the power to, allow something like that, or the U.S. ruling elite who have the power to create a Palestinian nation by no longer vetoing things at the UN, they would never do that. because once Palestine is an actual legitimate nation in the UN, etc., well, then suddenly Palestine and Palestinians have certain rights, national rights, that different than human rights, such as nations have a right to have their own military. There's no you can't tell a nation, oh, we don't like you having a military, unless you're going to go to war with them over it. They're supposed to be able to have their own military. They can develop their military weapons as they see fit. They're also supposed to have the right, the people in that nation are supposed to have the right to come and go as they please. Now, there are nations that don't give their citizens that right, like North Korea, but outside of that country, outside of a country, can't tell that nation you can't come and go. Any country in Africa, like we may hate various countries, but they have a right to come and go from their country. So, while Israel claims, Israel has a right to exist, they will never actually say Palestinians have a right to have a Palestinian state. They may say it occasionally as like a form of a trick debating technique. Oh, of course, I think Palestine, but they don't actually mean it. They will never actually get out of the way of of the creation of a Palestinian country.
It's a product of a racist set of colonial ideology, which is Zionism, which said all Jews have a right to Palestine at the expense of Palestinians. And that at the end of the day, Palestinians have three choices. And Israelis have been saying this openly for decades. They can remain as residents without rights, without political rights. They can fight and die, fight and be killed, which is what we're seeing now, or they can leave. That's it. Those are their choices. And we as Jews, although there's a big difference between a Jew and a Zionist, but we can maybe get into that later if you want, we have a right. Now, that is a supremacist, racist ideology.
Do you believe Israel has a right to exist? And almost what you say in that moment will determine whether you're a good person or a bad person. If you ask this question to any Palestinian, you're essentially asking this Palestinian to agree with the forced displacement of their own family.
Their own family, which, yeah. So that gets to I think the key form of entrapment of this question. The most important part of the entrapment is when they say, does Israel have a right to exist? They don't mean just in general, if you were to change Israel, if it were no longer an apartheid state, if it were allowed the occupied territories to be free and do as they wish. They're saying, does Israel, as it stands now, a genocidal apartheid state, have the right to exist? So they've wrapped that into the question without actually saying it. And when average, people, your family or whatever ask, they're not even thinking about it. Like if someone says to you, probably if you debate someone at lunch and they say, does Israel have a right to exist? They're probably not even thinking this. But this is what's wrapped into that question, is not, do you agree in a hypothetical Israel that's no longer an apartheid state, that isn't committing genocide? They're saying, are you down with what Israel is now? It is by definition apartheid. It is by definition settler colonial. It is by definition genocidal. It is by definition causing ethnic cleansing, committing ethnic cleansing. So all those things are wrapped into it. And if you say, yes, Israel has a right to exist, end of statement, you are agreeing that all of those things can proceed as is. Because if you do the opposite and say, well, I agree that Israel can exist, but it needs to stop being apartheid. It needs to let go of the occupied areas. It needs to stop, it needs to have nuclear weapon checks. It needs to, well, that's not it. To them, that's not Israel anymore. That doesn't count. Once it's no longer apartheid, it's not Israel, because once you had equal voting rights, well, the Jewish Zionists wouldn't rule that country. It wouldn't be a theocratic apartheid state any longer. And therefore, it doesn't count as the real Israel. It doesn't count as the kind of Israel they want. I don't know that this is the greatest analogy, but this is what I got. It reminds me of like if back when the U.S. had slavery, like I know there's still plenty of slavery that goes on in the world. There's still like, housekeepers that are never allowed out of the basement in people's homes in the U.S. But back when the U.S. had like legitimate full frontal slavery, like people working in the fields against their will, straight up slavery, chattel slavery. Back when the U.S. had that, this would be like you're discussing how you don't think there should be slavery. You think it's wrong. You think it's immoral. You think it should be illegal. And then the person goes, do you think the U.S. has a right to exist? And if you say yes, they're asking about the U.S. as it stood then, as it with slavery. But that's not in the question. Does the U.S. have a right to exist? Well, sure it does. Okay, then we get slavery. That's what the U.S. is. That's similar to what the Israel question is. Does Israel have the right to exist? Yes. Oh, okay. Then we get to have apartheid genocide state. That's what Israel is. Anyway, maybe I've gone off on this tangent for a bit too long, but I feel like they use that question endlessly as this big gotcha, and it's bullshit in like so many ways. Okay, I promised you solutions. You guys have voted multiple times. For those of you who don't know, I've done the little on-screen vote there, what you guys want to see more in this show. And by the way, you can email me at leecampmail@gmail.com. The thing I'd love for people to start sending me is videos, preferably not 3 hours long, but videos that I can tear apart. So if you see a 3-minute clip of a congressperson or a right-winger or whoever the fuck that needs ripping apart, I would love for those videos to be emailed to me. If it is an hour interview between Tucker Carlson and someone, then fine. I will try and take a look, but obviously it's easier to handle if it's 5 minutes or something. Thank you, Venticus Prime, again for donating over on Rumble, rumble.com/LeeCamp. Thank you guys for donating. Someone's chat saying can't find the poll. Yeah, no, these polls were on previous shows, so I'm not doing the poll right now. But I'm going to wrap up this poll though that we had today. How will the U.S. war against Iran end? 80% of you said global economic collapse and recessions. 20% of you said long-term U.S. military quagmire, and 0% said Trump declares victory and leaves, and 0% said the U.S. wins by putting in a puppet government in Iran. But what I was going to say is I've given the poll multiple times, and you guys said you want more solutions and more answers to problems in this world. So I am highlighting 2 solutions. Like I said, sometimes this may be things you can do, and sometimes it may just be awesome solutions that are out there. I'm going to highlight 2 right now. And I have said, this first one's about AI. And I have said that there's a million horrific things AI can do, but AI is a tool like a hammer, and it could be used in many wonderful ways as well. And I hope we see that more and more. However, unfortunately, the ruling elite who kind of own the systems, own the means of production of AI, they are, generally speaking, psychopaths and pedo terrorists. And therefore, they aren't as often going to use these tools for good rather than evil. But here is an example of how AI could help us. This is from NBC News. An AI system has found signs of pancreatic cancer long before tumors develop. And I don't know a lot about various types of cancer, but I know pancreatic cancer is one of the bigger killer forms of cancer. And it also can often be very fast acting, where you find out about it and you die from it not too long after. These AI models have been able to detect abnormalities long before humans could, and that gives a far higher chance of surviving this. The article says by the time doctors detect pancreatic cancer, it's often too late to treat effectively. But a new study suggests that artificial intelligence might be able to find signs of the disease before tumors are visible on the scan. An AI model developed at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, detected abnormalities on patient CT scans up to 3 years before they were diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. That's crazy. So yes, this alone is, and I also, this is one of the things I had highlighted as ways that AI could be used well. I didn't know about the detecting cancer that early, but I had said that AI already in many areas is better at diagnosing things than a doctor. Now, I don't mean you typing something into ChatGPT. I mean, if you have an actual AI program that's designed to diagnose patients and you then fill in everything the patient is complaining about and every medical data point you have, an AI model is probably going to be better than a doctor, than a human doctor at figuring out what it is. Not all the time, but a certain percentage of the time. And anyway, here's an example of how AI could be used in a very positive way. And, you know, I feel like that's just the beginning of how AI can be used in positive ways. All right, moving on to one more kind of good news solution story. I don't think I need to remind you guys that we're dealing with a bit of a plastic pollution problem in this world. There's a little bit, there's just a teeny too much plastic in this world, and it doesn't biodegrade. It just sits there. And I don't remember the numbers we use. Oh, I gotta look it up. It's like 1 million plastic bags a minute or something. How many plastic bags does the average American family use? They use 1,500 plastic bags a year. It is estimated that in the U.S. alone, 100 billion plastic bags are consumed annually. I don't even understand what that means. Sometimes my brain just like lacks the imaginative power to like you would think 100 billion plastic bags would just fill up the earth. Like literally we'd all be just neck deep in 100 billion plastic bags. Like, where do they go? I don't understand. Okay. 100 billion plastic bags annually. I do remember this fact. The world uses, I think it's the world and not the US, but the world uses enough plastic bags to cover the entirety of France twice over every year. And I support doing that, but that's a side point. No, I love France. If you're in France, I love you. You guys are great. Your sense of humor is a bit off, but otherwise, love you. But no, it is unfathomable amount of plastic. So here is one solution. A young man in Nairobi, Kenya, has found a way to use water hyacinth instead of plastic bags. Water hyacinth, I did not know until reading this, is a type of plant that is an invasive species and covers a lot of these waterways around the world, and it chokes out fish and everything else. But let me show you a little bit of video with this man in Kenya.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future of packaging. We found a way of making products that look like plastics, feel like plastics, and even perform just like plastics, but they decompose at the end of their lifetime. My name is Joseph Nguthiru, and I am the UN Young Champion of the Earth. We produce this out of water hyacinth, the world's most invasive aquatic weed. It's a weed that grows on top of lakes and waterways in more than 70 countries around the world, mostly in the global south. Blocks fishing, navigation, irrigation, kills fish, and is even a breeding ground for mosquitoes that then cause malaria to the local communities. It reproduces incredibly fast, every 6 to 12 days, and that's why it's so hard to manage. I found out that by extracting the cellulose out of the plant, we can make a product that's just as flexible, durable, and performing just like plastics. At my startup, Hireback, we now work together with these affected fishing communities to harvest the water hyacinth for us and dry it. And by doing that, they earn money. So far, creating over 45 green jobs for them, just as you would break up from a toxic relationship. Let's break up from a toxic relationship with plastics. It is time to let single-use plastics remain single.
And yeah, so great idea, brilliant idea. And, I've talked about this before, that it's like the answers are out there. We just often, thanks to capitalism, they just get sidelined. I highlighted this probably 2-3 years ago, highlighted a company a small company that developed essentially styrofoam, so packaging material made out of mushrooms, basically mycelium or something, and it looks like styrofoam, and of course it biodegrades because it's organic. Now here's where the problem comes in, is where I saw them talking about that. They were also talking about the patent they had applied for and how they were going to sell the technology to other companies that would then use the technology. But here, the problem is a lot of companies are like, oh, well, you know what's cheaper than paying for this organic, biodegradable form of styrofoam? Fucking styrofoam. Yeah, it's cheaper for us to just use the awful shit that never biodegrades, and that will be what we use because we'll save money that way. So now I don't know if this guy in Kenya, by the way, it's tough to begrudge him, making some money from his invention, but this is the problem with capitalism. Is it's not we come up with the answers and then we put them behind a paywall. And we say, well, this could solve a lot of the Earth's problems, but you know what? Let's patent it and charge a lot of money for it, and we'll get rich that way. Two people who run the company will get very rich, and the world will die. And so we just gotta break out of this fucking everything's behind a paywall. Our survival is paywalled now. It's we need to come up with answers, and then they need to spread as fast as that water hyacinth, just breed across the world. Just here, this solves a problem. Okay, everybody does it now. That's what it fucking should be. And instead we're like, oh, here's the solution. Well, we'll charge a lot of money for it. Some people might use it. That'll be interesting. That'll be fun. I'll get rich. And I have no idea what that guy's doing. I'm not saying he's doing that, but I'm saying this is how the systems often work. And for someone who's small time like him, let's say he wants to help the planet. So he then says, you know what? I'm going to barely charge anything. I'm just going to charge the cost of creating, barely enough for me to live, to give these disposable plastic bags to everyone around the world. Often the technology or sometimes they just buy the company out from under the guy. Sometimes they just find a way to steal the technology where legally they can't be prosecuted. And they then become the main manufacturer, the big manufacturer of the thing that the small guy had. But they have far more resources to, let's say, get it around the world. So they get it to America and they get it to Europe and everything, and they charge a lot more money. And anyway, it's the answers are out there. We have the fucking solutions, and we just ignore so many of them. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, there's 2 more solutions for you. You guys voted. You want more solutions on this show, so I'm bringing them to you. And let's see, Wednesday, I'll be back Wednesday with a Government Secrets episode. For those of you who don't know Government Secrets, my podcast live stream with Graham Elwood about various government secrets. And it's, we go live around 9 a.m. or something Eastern, but it's obviously up for you to watch at any time during that day. And the podcast is available on any podcast platform. But so that's Wednesday. Friday, we'll be back with another live stream. It's likely that Friday will just be Eleanor Goldfield hosting the live stream. But anyway, I will see you guys soon, and I hope you see fit to throw me the cost of 1 beer a month. You can do that over at reallycamp.substack.com or patreon.com/leecamp, or leecamp.net, my locals page. All of those will work. And as I mentioned earlier, although some of you may have missed it, I have a new column over at Substack about Israel and how Israel is planning to resume the horrific war against Gaza. I certainly hope they don't do it, but apparently this is what's being reported, is that they are planning on it. Also, the new numbers are that they have stolen 60% now of Gaza, and they quite possibly have murdered 680,000 people when you count indirect deaths. But anyway, go check out that column, and you can share it and everything over at reallycamp.substack.com. Arcane Eclectic is asking, when is Eleanor going to be on the show again? I just told you. 8 seconds ago, I told you. Eleanor will either be hosting the show alone on Friday, or we'll both be on it Friday. So either way, you will get Eleanor. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Keep fighting.